Yes, I'd like to show you some of the new features and where maintenance items are going on the new Boxster. We'll start with oil and the water. There's some slight changes there. For years, the Boxster model has had both of these items together on the right-hand side. Well, now, as you can see, we still have oil on the right-hand side of the trunk as we're facing it here, but our water access here for the coolant is on the left-hand side. And a little later we'll be taking some of that apart to show you what's underneath. So in the front, we've got just like the 991, a large access panel that we can lift up and then it hangs in place. So we can get in here and look at routine things we want to check on a routine basis, like brake fluid. Your washer fluid level can be topped off here. Underneath this panel is the compressor for tire. If you have a flat tire and you put the sealant in, of course there's no spare, but the sealant is, I'll show you that too. The sealant is in this compartment, tire sealant. We hope you never have to use that, and probably you won't. You might need it, but you won't probably use it. You'll probably call it a tow truck. And then we have the compressor to fill that up after you put the tire sealant in it. And of course battery, periodically will have you maintain fluid levels there. The next most interesting thing I think up in the front is something that the construction of this is consistent with the 991, and that is, like the Cayennes in the past, we have a sensor for air quality. This mainly controls, or at least at this point only controls, the recirculation flap in the climate control system. So if it senses NOx or high CO content, either of those gases in the air, it will shut off the close the recirculation valve in the climate control system so that hopefully none or less of that comes into the passenger. We also have for the first time a pre-filter, so this helps knock out some of the heavier elements and pollens before it ever gets to the actual cabin filter inside the climate control box. So like I say, that's all this is just like 991. On these new cars is the air filter system. You might already know that your car's got twin air filters now instead of just a single tracked intake. We'll see that now as we uncover the rear trunk, and we'll be able to see both air filters and how we get to changing the air filter elements. So these just pop off. So for the sake of this exercise, to demonstrate the air filters, we're going to do the harder one of the two. So we've got a left side, driver's side air filter on this here, and then underneath the engine motronics, actually the brain of the engine, is where we get access to the other one. So that's the one we'll do, because this is the tougher one. So first have to remove the bolts and move this off to the side before we can even get to this. We have to exercise caution here because the oil fill tube has to be disconnected, and of course that's going to be very important to put back on when we're done, or else we're going to fill our trunk up with oil when we fill the car back up. We're getting the DME out of the way. Now just one screw that holds the air filter assembly down, and then pop it out. First time out on this brand new car, so it's going to likely be a little tight. So there's one of these on each side projecting into the engine compartment, filtering all the air going into the engine. And it's removed by two more screws inside here to change the filter element. That would be the first service item beyond just a maintenance is potentially the drive belt. Now spark plugs come in about the same period of time, but we're going to demonstrate where the drive belt is and what it takes to get access to the drive belt. It's behind a similar, what can be called a wall flap at times, behind the driver and passenger, and so now we'll get access to that by moving the seats forward and moving this carpeting panel. If I was actually going to be replacing items, like for the belt or anything else, probably would even remove the seats. They're not that difficult to remove. But this being a brand new car, I don't really feel the need to do that. Now we'll actually remove the panel that gets us access to the belt. Okay, so here's our drive belt, which you might notice is only running your alternator, water pump, and AFC compressor. There is no power steering pump because of our electric power steering. But this would be part of routine maintenance, checking the drive belt and its rollers, as well as then eventually replacing. Maintenance, we might call it, is the spark plugs. They're changed roughly same time as the belt, the belt we just demonstrated. Now the spark plugs, in a moment I'll show you how to do them on the racks. You do have to take the wheels off to do this, but just for sake of demonstration, we'll come down and look. You can look right down through the wheel here, and if you can see, you may not be able to, but the gray outline with the black center, that is the rearmost coil on this side of the engine. So you can see they only get tougher from there as they go in towards the center of the engine. But to say the least, it has to be up on a rack with the wheels off and a couple of panels off to change the spark plugs. We'll talk about isn't, I wouldn't call really maintenance, cooling system. We mentioned that at the outset. You can have access here to see if the cooling system is full. You'd obviously want to check that only cold in the morning sometime. But if the cooling system has ever failed in some way or lost its coolant for whatever reason, and you have to fix it, or repair that and then re-bleed the system, you'd have to get greater access than this cap. So that's what we're going to show now, is putting the top into the position where we can get the engine cover off, where further, not really maintenance, but further repair work can be gotten access from, as well as bleeding coolant. Remove this lid. As far as maintenance goes, it'd be only to get access to the actual cap for the coolant bottle. So this is where, the bleeding process would potentially for Porsche technician would take place, as well as this device has to be opened during the bleeding process to ventilate the cooling system. Beyond that, there's not much in here that anyone will ever need to do for regular maintenance. It would only be access for any kind of problems or diagnostics. As I mentioned, I think earlier, the power steering is no longer mechanical; it's electric. So on the servicing, routine servicing would potentially be spark plugs. So there, as I mentioned, access by taking the wheel off. This panel would also help take this panel off. But now you can see on this bank, this is the passenger side bank of cylinders, all three of the coils, which of course have to be removed and then change the spark plugs.